where do you see cards fitting into this landscape?
Yeah.
When we're now seeing mobile payments come in as well?
Yeah. So I mean, for me, at the end of the day, the most important thing is the consumer experience. So cards were extremely successful because the consumer experience at the time was relevant to how we used to transact in our day-to-day lives. It was very normal to go to a restaurant with a wallet and have multiple cards in there. The point-of-sale machines worked very well, and it was the best way to do it. However, now with the rise of smartphones and kind of mobile payments and mobile technology, we're used to living our lives digitally. We live socially through Instagram and Facebook and TikTok and whatever. We transact now online. We do all of our mobile banking online. A few years ago, it was very common for the majority of the population to walk into a high street bank to do their banking.
And take half a day off work.
Half a day off work. Now, I don't know what the percentage is, I'm not in banking, but I would assume it's 98, 99% are just going to do it through a mobile app or through a website.
Surely.
And as that consumer experience is being crossed over to payments. So I think cards will stick around, but their form factor will change. So we'll see the rise of e-wallets, where it's just easier to transact using an e-wallet. It's easier to pay a friend, peer-to-peer payments. You're going to use an e-wallet. You're not going to use cash anymore. But cards will power some of those wallets behind the scenes. I think that won't be all of the transactions. A lot of them will move over to bank transfer methods or buy now, pay laters.
Yeah.
So, a credit card, for example, a few years ago was very common if you needed credit. Now you would just use a buy now, pay later provider because the user experience is more easy. And then over time, you might use a card to pay it off for a bank transfer scheme behind the scenes. So cards will stick around for a while, but I don't think they'll be the main or dominant payment method going forward. There'll be a kind of a loading mechanism on the side, and eventually I think they'll move away.
Yeah.
And I think the big acquirers and the big card schemes know this. They're investing in different payment methods. Visa and MasterCard are investing in open banking schemes. They're investing in certain e-wallets. So they know time is the clock's running down. Yeah. But I think it'll take a lot longer than we expect.
Now, what we've already had from this conversation is we've understood the challenges that maybe the merchants are having, the PSPs are having, but then we've also looked at the opportunities that face the end consumer. So I'm intrigued as to what will wallets provide the end consumer when they're trying to interact with their merchants, and what's the benefit for the merchants as well?
I think it'll be just ease of use.
Right.
So firstly, ease of use. Transacting on an e-wallet or just through a bank transfer, just through your phone is much easier than using cash or using a card where you have to type in a PIN and remember all of this. Today you just scan your face or scan your fingerprints and you're in. So I think ease of use will be the first one. And also even just consumers are used to using e-wallets and bank transfer methods. So your peer-to-peer payments are driving a lot of this adoption. The second point I think is visibility. So it's visibility over the transaction status, the order status as well. So a lot of these e-wallets and apps are providing additional data on the top. So in the past, if you did a card transaction, you would send your details off. It might only show up in your bank statement a day or two later. That's getting a bit better now. We're getting real-time information through card acquiring. But through an e-wallet, you often now get the order status as well. So you make a purchase, you get the order status. You might get shipping notifications through it as well. You can request refunds sometimes through these e-wallets and apps. And it's more of an interactive, embedded solution versus a payment rail on the side and then an entire customer experience in this thing. So it's more of an integrated way of transacting.
How payments are really connected to every part of the value chain.
Think of something you do in this day and age where payments is not involved. Payments are involved in everything.
Fascinating.
And it's a bit of a buzzword, but it's this whole embedded payments, embedded finance landscape that we're looking at, and I think that's certainly the future. Like we'll live our lives through some of these e-wallets and some of these apps. And we've seen it happen in other regions.
Right.
So if you look at Asia Pacific, there was the rise of super apps. You got Alipay and WeChat Pay, where you're literally doing everything through these apps. You're ordering taxis, you're ordering food.
I get my rail tickets.
You get your rail tickets. You're getting everything through those apps.
Yeah.
We haven't seen the same adoption in Europe, but I think it's going to happen just in a different form factor.
Well, you've brought up fragmentation there, and I'm intrigued to find out how, as Europe has countries that are laggards and then become leapfroggers, are we going to then have to have a more fractured European payments ecosystem?
I think in Europe, yes, and even Asia Pacific will
Yeah.
remain fractured for a while, just because from a geographical perspective and cultural perspective, they're fractured culturally. And there's nothing wrong with that. It's just different user preferences occur in different countries. So naturally, there'll be a fragmentation of payment preferences. I think over time, it'll consolidate. I mean, we're already seeing some consolidation in the payments landscape. You know, some companies are buying up every platform they can get hold of, and we'll start seeing the same thing happen on a payment scheme basis. But I think we're a few years, we're a few years behind that trend. So it'll happen, but it's going to remain fractured. Sorry, it'll happen, but it'll remain fragmented for a few more years.
So how can merchants keep up in that fractured landscape? How can they accept payments in one way from another?
Yeah.
Remember, my finished customer base actually want it in check format.
Yeah, and I think, I'm going to repeat what I said earlier on.
Yeah.
It's working with the right partners, but also trying to think one step ahead. Don't try solve for a single market at a time, because even in Europe, no merchant will just enter a single market or a single country in Europe. They should enter the market and have step 2 and 3 already in place, or work with a partner that at least has some kind of coverage so they can grow with a particular partner. Because what we tend to find is some merchants will work with some partners or some platforms, and within a year or two they'll grow out of those platforms very quickly. Then they get into technical debt, and then they struggle to grow, and they struggle to kind of accelerate. So it's thinking about those challenges at the offset will kind of help them accelerate in their future.
And knowing you're going to scale too. Now,
Exactly, yeah. And we're even seeing that just in the marketplace with providers. The rise of payment orchestration, the rise of all these different kind of routing solutions is solving for that challenge. But it's about picking the right partner who has the right upstream connections so they can solve their challenges.
Well, picking a partner relies on open banking and Payment Service Directive 2, but we're getting to the point now where we can start talking about Payment Service Directive 3. How's that going to change the payments landscape? What's going to be the real kicker that people haven't realized about yet?
Yeah, well, PSD2 was extremely successful, I think, for the region, but that was put together years ago, and there were a lot of elements of the payments landscape that just weren't around when that was put into place. You take into account crypto or DLT payments, it just didn't exist at the same scale as it does today. So I think PSD3 will really help us accelerate over the next few years once it's put in place. I do think it'll be one of those inflection points for the payments industry, because there's been enough, every year I come to Money 2020, there's a different theme or a different buzzword. It was crypto one year, then it was risk the other year, then it was orchestration the other year. We've actually reached a point in time when it's settled down a little bit, and now the focus is about making all of these different technologies actually work.
You could play buzzword bingo in the last couple of months.
Exactly.
Right?
Whereas this year, I can't actually think of a single buzzword that's occurring at the moment. But everybody I speak to, it's about how can we make what's available now work to the best of its ability. It's partly maybe due to the macroeconomic factors, because everybody has become profitable, we have to show value, but I think that's going to drive a lot of value in the market, because it's not about proving I'm more innovative than my competitor, it's about proving I can provide more value than my competitor today.
Fascinating.
And that's, I think the mixture of that plus PSD3 kind of helping almost compound that will make a big difference over the next few years. So I'll be excited to have this conversation in 2 or 3 years' time to see actually how some of this is coming about.
Did any of it come together?
Yeah.
But speaking of that, if we were to ask about central bank digital currencies, buy now, pay later, what's really going to be driving digital payments in the future? What will we look back on in those 2 years and say, we should have been on the CBDC train faster, or where should we go?
So I think in terms of topics like buy now, pay later, or open banking, or e-wallets, I think that's going to be completely down to the consumer.
Right.
I don't think that will be driven by PSPs or merchants or even by regulators to a degree. Consumers going to use the easiest way to pay. They're going to use what provides them with the most value. Now, on the other side, things like CBDCs and For me, I see CBDCs and even crypto and DLT payments, that will be driven from a regulatory standpoint, because that's more on the infrastructure and the treasury side of payments and businesses. And I think that's where regulation and PSD2 will drive the agenda. So I think how that unfolds is going to be very important for us to see how we can take advantage of that and improve our businesses. I think we're at the point in time where it's about optimizing what we're already doing today and making it better, because we're not actually reinventing the wheel. We're now trying to create as much value in the ecosystem.